Hello, everybody. My name is Martha Alter Hines, and I'm with Living the One Light. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about some really powerful themes that I'm feeling calling to me more and more strongly as we get closer to summer in Northern Hemisphere, winter in Southern Hemisphere. And really, they're themes that I'm feeling particularly alive between now. I'm recording this on May 17th, 2024, between May-ish and September-ish. But these themes are actually alive, way before this and way after this as well. It's just there's a lot going on between now and September that I want to drop into with you, and that I feel like are giving us an opportunity to be holding and addressing these particular themes especially strongly. So, so the overarching theme that I want to talk about is this opportunity that I feel for us over this coming several months, and of course, before and after that as well, to sit with our relationship to patriarchy, essentially, and to the hurt that's been caused. Maybe a better way to put it is the hurt that's been caused in this time of forgetting. And for us to come into a transmuted relationship with all of that pain, that hurt, our way of being with it in ourselves, and so that we can move on, essentially. Not so that we ignore it, not so that we pretend it didn't happen, because it surely did, and it surely still is. That's just true. But so that we can be in this time of remembering in the next way. We can meet the next moment in the most helpful way possible. I guess that's the way to put it. So there are so many powerful, powerful things going on in the next several months, especially with outer planets and Kuiper belt objects and Ceres and many things. So I'm just going to go layer by layer. So one of the layers that gives a kind of backdrop context to this moment in time is Pluto, the dance of that Pluto's doing right now. So I just want to bring us back to this reality of where Pluto is right now and what Pluto is doing. In previous videos, I've talked about, at least a couple different videos, when Pluto was entering Aquarius in January. I talked about how Pluto will be entering Aquarius a total of 3 times. So the first time was in March of 2023, a little over a year ago. It was then, at that time, it was in Aquarius for just a little, 2 or 3 months, I think from March to June-ish of 2023. Then Pluto went retrograde back into Capricorn and was in Capricorn then until January of 2024, this year. And now we are currently in the second dip of Pluto being in Aquarius from January of 2024 to September 1st or 2nd, depending on where you are in the world, of 2024. Pluto just went retrograde on May 2nd, 2024 at 2 degrees of Aquarius. So in January of 2024, Pluto entered Aquarius for the second time. It went, Pluto moves very slowly. So it just went from 0 of Pluto 0 of Aquarius to 2 degrees of Aquarius. And then it went retrograde. And now it's going retrograde, still at that 2 degrees of Aquarius. And it'll keep going retrograde until it re-enters that 29 degrees of Capricorn on September 1st or 2nd, 2024. And then it's gonna go direct and re-enter Aquarius for that 3rd time in November of 2024. And then when it re-enters for that third time, then it'll be in Aquarius for 20 years. So what I talked about in the previous videos back in January, is that one image that comes really alive for me in thinking of those 3 times where Pluto is in Aquarius is it's like there's a lake, and the lake is Aquarius, I guess you could say. And that first time that we dipped into Pluto into Aquarius in 2023 was kind of like I get the image of us wading in maybe to our calves, and then we went back onto shore onto to Capricorn. And then January of this year, now we waded in for a second time, and maybe we've come up to our shoulders. Like we're really testing it out this time. But we're not ready to we're not swimming through the whole lake yet. We're just, getting the feeling of it a bit more deeply. And then in September of this year, 2024, we're going to go back up onto land, into Capricorn from September to November for 2.5 months, and, get our land legs back, I guess. And then November 2024, then we have a 20-year swim in Aquarius, Pluto in Aquarius. Okay, so that's this big backdrop of what's part of what's going on right now. And in this time between now and September, May 2nd was when Pluto went retrograde at 2 degrees of Aquarius, and then Pluto is going retrograde, but still in Aquarius until September 1st of 2024, when it then dips just into that 29 degrees of Capricorn again, and then will re-enter for the next 20 years in November of 2024. So when something is going retrograde like that, especially when we're in the middle of the second time of trying out this energetic of what is this Pluto and Aquarius thing, it feels like on many levels like this opportunity for us to be testing this out, trying this out. The first time we just waded just up to our calves, and we got the flavor of what is this energy like? What is this Pluto and Aquarius thing like? The second time, maybe you tell me what it feels like for you, but for me, it feels like maybe now we're, really getting the feeling of it. But the beauty, and I feel like a certain wisdom in the way that planetary motion happens and the motion of life happens, is that it gives us time to integrate, to try it out, to go back, to try it out again, go back, and then we do it, right? And so just even that Pluto and Aquarius energetic right now, going retrograde between now and September in Aquarius, is really an energy that where we can be getting supported to go deeply inside, to really feel, okay, what's alive for me in this, my own relationship to whatever this Pluto and Aquarius energy happens to be. And that could be so many things. And I think collectively, it's a conversation. What is that feeling? Because Pluto, wherever it is, whatever sign it happens to be in, typically is a generational energetic. So there's the Pluto in Capricorn energetic, and there's a Pluto in Sagittarius energetic. It's like often a whole wave of what goes on in the collective. And Pluto having been in Capricorn, one way to think of that is, of course, the dissolving and the reassessing of our structures of society and the way we label things, the way that we structure how we do all kinds of things. So that's one component of Pluto being in Aquarius. I mean, Pluto being in Capricorn. And Pluto being in Aquarius, I don't really want to label it yet. It's, again, it can be so many different things. But how do we perceive of things? How do we, what's our relationship to the intelligence of the divine and coming into that true deep intelligence of ourselves as divine? That's one component. There's so much more there. But as we're doing this dance of Pluto being in Aquarius and going back into Capricorn, we're still working out, of course, among many other things, we're still working out, well, these structures of our society that aren't working need to dissolve, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Clearly that's not going to stop when Pluto fully enters Aquarius. It's not like suddenly everything is perfect, obviously. But the Pluto dancing between Capricorn and Aquarius for me, for sure, highlights extra strongly the this feeling, this knowing that so much of this is not okay. It's not, it sucks, right? We see that in all kinds of ways. Right. Okay. So that's backdrop number one. Then another second component that is happening now and will be especially strong between now and September is Ceres. And actually this also, so the Pluto entered Aquarius for the second time in January. Ceres is doing a really, really fascinating, really beautiful dance right now. It's especially strong right now, but I'm going to tell you, I have created a list of the Ceres transits that are really fascinating and strong. So I'm going to tell them to you here. Actually, I'll just share my screen so you can see it in case that's helpful to you. You can see my notes, and I don't know, it may or may not be helpful to you. Ignore them if it's not helpful. But in case the visual is helpful, I will just share it with you. Okay. So as I've talked about before, I did a video on the Mercury retrograde that we just had. And let me actually say a little bit about that first. So what I talked about in that Mercury retrograde video is the phases of retrogrades of anything, not just of Mercury. So this applies to Ceres as well. It applies to everything. Anything that goes retrograde, like the moon doesn't go retrograde, for example, the sun doesn't go retrograde. Okay, but other stuff goes retrograde. When anything is going retrograde, typically we in astrology think about it while it's going retrograde. What we often forget is that that retrograde period is actually only phase 2 out of usually 3 phases of the retrograde dance. Because when something is going retrograde, what that means is that it's, from our perspective on Earth, it's going quote unquote backward through the zodiac. But in order for it to go backward, it has to have first gone forward, right? And after it goes backward, it's also going to go forward. So the period where that planet, from our perspective, is tracing over the journey that it's going to do when it's going retrograde, that's called entering the shadow of the retrograde. And that's phase 1 of the retrograde journey. Then phase 2 is when it actually goes retrograde. It goes back to the place that started that retrograde shadow. And then phase 3 starts when that planet goes direct and traces that same journey a third time. So like I talked about in the Mercury retrograde video, phase 1 often is when certain dynamics or feelings or thoughts will come up, like arise as that planet is making that journey for the first time. Then the retrograde period happens, which is phase 2. And that's often when we'll have a sense of, okay, I noticed before that, X, Y, and Z theme was arising, and now it's arising a second time. But this time I'm getting a sense of, maybe I want to do this differently. Maybe I want to kind of take a deep breath, go inside, and reconsider my relationship to whatever this theme is. And then typically, this is not a rule, but like just giving the basic outline. Then when that planet is having the phase 3, when it's going direct and back over that same space for that third time, that's often when there's a sense of resolution, or like, yeah, there's my answer there. Here's now how I want to move forward with whatever that issue was or that theme was. But we often don't think about the retrograde until phase 2 starts. Like for example, I'm about to talk about Ceres because phase 2 has just started with Ceres, and I wasn't even thinking about it until the other day. But here's what's really, really cool. So let me bring back this list that I was going to show you. All right. So Ceres just went retrograde on May 14th, 2024, just 3 days ago. And when it went retrograde, it was actually squaring Chiron exactly. And that is a whole theme. So a whole topic, which I'll talk about in 1 second. But first, I just want to give you these dates of the phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 of this Ceres retrograde time, because it's spanning quite a long time. And this whole time is this time period that I'm talking about today, and that there's other components in here that I want to bring in. So phase 1 started on February 29th of 2024. So phase 1 of the Ceres retrograde journey this year started on February 29th, 2024. That's when Ceres entered its retrograde shadow, starting at 7 degrees 29 minutes of Capricorn. So then on March 28th, 2024, Ceres squared the nodes of the moon at 15 degrees 35 minutes of Capricorn. And that was, if you remember, that was 3 days after the first eclipse that we had this year. So we had an eclipse on March 25th, and then we had another eclipse on April 8th. And Ceres, I talked about this in my eclipse videos, Ceres was squaring the nodes of the moon through that whole eclipse time. So Ceres was extremely, extremely powerfully present through those eclipses. And Chiron, if you remember, was exactly conjunct the new moon of the eclipse on April 8th. So again, Ceres was extremely prominent in those eclipses, and Chiron was also. So the Ceres-Chiron combination is really key, really, really beautiful. And I'll drop into what my feeling about what that means is in a second, but I just want to give you these facts first. So then, like I said, 3 days ago, now we're in May 2024, and on May 14th, 2024, Ceres went retrograde at 21 degrees 32 minutes of Capricorn, and it was exactly squaring Chiron when it did that. So Chiron is at 21 degrees of Aries right now. So now Ceres is in its phase 2 of its retrograde time. It's in its actual retrograde period. So one thing you could even do now is think back to this period of time starting February 29th, and think on, what themes maybe have been particularly alive for you from February 29th. I mean, not exactly that day, but kind of around that time through those eclipses and until now. And that could be, I mean, if I'm thinking about my own life, like I wouldn't even know where to begin with that. It could be so many different things, but I just put that out there that could be something you could feel into if something really clearly arises for you, especially if you have planets in this 7 degrees to 21 degrees of Capricorn, especially then. You could think about your own chart and that space of your chart between 7-ish and 21-ish of Capricorn, there might be something really, really alive. And I'm gonna talk about some other things going on in that same area of the sky, that also just kind of keep those degrees in mind. The same would be true also, maybe not as strongly, but certainly if you have anything, 7 to 21 degrees of Cancer, 7 to 21 degrees of Aries and Libra. Also, all of those are going to be particularly highlighted, but especially Capricorn. But I can think of an example. I mean, I can think of examples of people's charts I've been looking at lately where it's in Libra or in Aries or in Cancer, and it's very alive for all of them. Yeah, okay. So now, like I said, Ceres just went retrograde at 21 of Capricorn, squaring Chiron exactly. And now it's in that phase 2 where we might be, again, similar to Pluto just having gone retrograde, where we're in this time of going deeply into ourselves and feeling into, okay, how is this Pluto and Aquarius energy feeling for me? What do I maybe want to take from this experience? What do I want to leave? What's needing to transmute or change or all of that. Similarly, Ceres now is retrograde for the same period of time. So Pluto is retrograde from May 2nd to in Aquarius, until it re-enters Capricorn in the beginning of September, and it still, anyway. But Ceres will be retrograde from May 14th to August 26th, 2024. So Pluto's going retrograde in Aquarius, about to re-enter Capricorn, and Ceres is going retrograde in Capricorn. And so they're both having this retrograde feeling at the same time. I'll get to this a little more in a minute, but in the middle of all that, Neptune is also going to go retrograde on July 2nd at 29:55 of Pisces. Okay, so that's a whole thing in and of itself. I'm going to get back to that in a second, but I just want to say there's a lot of this retrograde feeling going on in this whole time period. So just so much of this coming back inside, reassessing, okay, how do I want to show up for this differently? How can I move with this differently, etc. Really powerful energy. Right. Okay. And so then, phase 3 will begin for the Ceres retrograde journey. Phase 3 will begin on August 26th, 2024, when it's going to go direct at 7 degrees, 29 minutes of Capricorn. And when it does that, it will be almost precisely squaring the nodes of the moon. So it will go direct at 7:29 of Capricorn, and the nodes of the moon at that time are going to be at 7:7 Aries and Libra. So virtually precisely. So it's really powerful. Okay, so let me pause there for a second, because that was a lot of information and I still have more data to give you, but let me give you a little, not so much data, more like feelings about it. Okay, so Ceres, let me just talk about Ceres for a minute. Ceres is really fascinating. I love Ceres energy so much. It's very, very prominent in my own chart, and I think I identify with Ceres energy really strongly. And I have a kitty cat here. She's being cute, and that's evoking my own Ceres energy. Yeah, Ceres is so many things. Okay, so first of all, Ceres, just on a planetary or astronomical level, is really, really, really significant, important. Moshe, Wolfe and Soul recently did a video which where they're talking about Ceres, and I actually haven't even watched it yet, but I'm going to, and I definitely would recommend watching. I already know I'm sure it's worth watching. So that's recent, and go check that out if you feel called to it. But my own sense of things with Ceres, number one, Ceres is the biggest asteroid. It's a dwarf planet in the asteroid belt. It's actually so big that most of the other asteroids could be combined, and Ceres would be about that size or even bigger. I mean, Ceres is really, really big compared to the other asteroids. It was when it was discovered, it was actually originally named a planet. And then the discovery of this planet actually led to, it was involved in the whole demotion of, quote unquote, demotion of Pluto to a dwarf planet. And it was part of this whole conversation. So Ceres in a lot of ways is just, I feel like it doesn't get enough attention, really, which one could easily say is, again, related to the whole time of forgetting and the forgetting of the feminine and all of that, for sure. And it, more and more and more, I feel like it's not accurate to think of Ceres as, yet another asteroid. It's in a category of its own for a lot of reasons, for me. And I'm sitting with that actually myself and just trying to feel into it more and more. So just naming that. On another level, just on the mythological story level of it, Ceres is, and I actually did a whole free talk on Ceres a year ago, which I'll link with this. You're welcome to watch it. But Ceres is the mother of Demeter, or Persephone. And so Ceres was the goddess of agriculture, cereal, Ceres, goddess of the harvest. And long story short, Demeter, or Persephone, was either abducted by Pluto or chose to go to the underworld. And in any case, she went to the underworld one way or another, either by her own volition or by being abducted. And Ceres, her mother, was devastated, of course. And Ceres went looking for her, etc. There's a whole dance with the many versions of the story of how Ceres then eventually found her daughter in the underworld and negotiated for her to be able to come back. That's a whole thing, and there's various versions of that. But one way or another, then Persephone did come back to Ceres eventually. But in the meantime, Ceres went into a rage, and she went into grief, and she was exceedingly distraught. Of course, she's a mother. And so there's this whole period where, when she's in this extreme rage and grief, she was so upset that, long story short, she essentially created winter. So she's the goddess of the harvest and growth and all of that. And she said, forget about it. I'm done with this. And everything, went into winter. And then when she did eventually find Persephone, her daughter, then Persephone is Persephone is called the goddess of the underworld, and she's also called the goddess of spring, which is really, really interesting. And I have a whole set of feelings about Persephone, which is, really beautiful for me. For me, Persephone is like a midwife of the underworld, but that's a whole other story. But Ceres, then, when basically Ceres worked out a deal to have Persephone in the underworld part of the year and up with Ceres in another part of the year. And so that is, one version of the story goes, that's how we have winter and spring and summer and winter and spring and summer, the dance of that. So when Persephone goes to the underworld, we have winter. When Persephone comes back, then we have spring, i.e. she's the goddess of spring. And then we have that dance back and forth all year. I mean, throughout the years. Okay. So for me, when I've observed Ceres transits and Ceres in various people's charts, absolutely, for sure, definitely, she definitely astrologically is certainly related to motherhood, mother ring, nurture ring. When I've looked at what parents' charts with their children, often, not always, but often, the moon and Ceres are the two things that show up between children and mothers frequently. Not always. Ceres also can have to do with surrogate motherhood, adoptive mothers, or adoptive parenting, especially motherhood. And also Ceres, to me, absolutely has a quality of being tied to grief. And I would say, in a certain way, the importance of grief, the role that grief plays in so many ways, like that literally crying often is part of what helps us let go. Ceres is also related to the necessity of letting go of our children or people we love, but especially children or people we consider, in a more of a child role. And how, as a parent or as a mother, we don't have control over whether they, over what they do and what their life path it is what it is. And that's often really, really hard as a parent or as a mother. Really difficult. I'm a mom. I mean, I'd say probably that's, yeah, just a universal feeling, probably. So yeah, so Ceres is a whole set of layers of things, but those are some of the main themes I feel with Ceres. And there's this really powerful relationship between Ceres and Pluto, for sure, because again, Persephone theoretically is either abducted by Pluto, whatever. She ends up marrying Pluto and all of that. And then astronomically, Ceres and Pluto were both, they had this dance of either being a planet or not being a planet, being a dwarf planet or a full planet, or they both were in that dance with astronomers. So that's really, really interesting. Right. Okay. So there's so much there. All right. So I'm going to pause with that for a second, and then we're going to come back to that in a second. But now here's component number 3. So let me show you the chart with this. And this starts to bring in some Kuiper belt objects. So I want to give the caveat that with Kuiper belt objects, it's really important to me. So a lot of you just came or were part of this free gathering that I did about Lele Kuhanua, the Oort cloud being. I just held that on Wednesday of this week. It was so beautiful, so wonderful. Thank you so much for those of you who have been involved with that, who were there live and who have been commenting and sharing and all of that. Really wonderful. I mean, truly. And for any of you who haven't signed up for it, it's going to be available indefinitely, and it's going to be an ongoing thing. I'm planning to probably hold a part 2 for this gathering, maybe in, I don't know when yet, July or August-ish. I'm going to be doing some other videos and follow-up conversations with various people coming up about it. But please, the whole point of that gathering was to be holding our way of being with this Oort cloud being as a co-remembering. So an honoring of each of our innate wisdom in how we remember who these beings are, we listen to them, we honor them as a collective. It's really crucial and important. And I'll say more about that in future videos too. But similarly with Kuiper belt objects or beings, I feel really strongly that we need to maybe take a little bit of a step back to, I think the way that we think of Kuiper belt objects, beings is, there's some really beautiful, really, really beautiful ways we already think of them that I do agree with and that I think are really helpful and all of that. And I feel like I would really like us to slow down a little because just like with this being, Lelea Kuhanua is, so new to the human consciousness and the they're a lot of them are named after cultures that are indigenous and have current practices, current traditions that I feel like I just want to slow it down a little so we can deeply honor the languages that these names are coming from and the cultures and the traditions they're coming from, and not rush ahead too much. And also it feels important to maybe hold space for the Kuiper belt beings also to be held in a co-remembering way as well. So that's just my little caveats, because I'm about to talk about Kuiper belt beings and about to give interpretations about them, but I do it with that little asterisk that I don't really like the idea of claiming that I really know that much about them, because I feel like it's hard for us to know that much yet, especially if we haven't gone deeply into ourselves with it. And I know I haven't. I'm not saying other people haven't. I think some people absolutely probably have. And yeah, anyway. So yes. Okay. Here is the chart of right now. So you can see here is Ceres, and it went retrograde, like I said, on May 14th, 21 degrees of Capricorn. It was exactly squaring Chiron when it did that. Chiron is now at 21 degrees of Aries. And here is Lele Akuhanua, just to throw that in. So Lele Akuhanua is going to be conjunct the north node of the moon, if you think of her on the ecliptic, which she's not. But anyway, but that will happen on June 8th of this year. And so what is going on is that as Ceres has been doing its retrograde journey, remember, it started that retrograde journey February 29th, 2024 at 7 degrees of Capricorn. So right in here. And it went retrograde just now at 21 degrees of Capricorn, and it's going to be going back all the way into this little group again. And it'll go direct at 7 degrees of Capricorn, conjunct these three beings, Ixion, Quawar, and Pholus. And when it goes direct in August, like I said earlier, it's going to be exactly squaring the nodes of the moon at 7 degrees of Capricorn. And these beings are, all three of them are currently also going retrograde. So all four of these beings are going to meet in Capricorn, and they're all going to go direct, essentially squaring the nodes of the moon. Some, a few of them more precisely than other ones. But so Ceres, as it's doing this retrograde journey, it's not by itself. It's meeting with this group of beings who are all going to be squared by the nodes of the moon in the coming months. And that square will be particularly strong July, August, September. But I'm bringing it up now in May because as Ceres has been going doing its retrograde journey. Now it's in phase 2, but even when it was in phase 1, starting in February 29th, it's bringing up the themes associated with where it's traveling, and where it's traveling is through this group. So now when it went retrograde, squaring Chiron, it is heading back into the mix of these 3 beings for the second time. And then it'll go direct with these beings, squaring the nodes of the moon in August. Okay, so who are these 3 beings and what am I talking about? All right, these 3 are, again, Ixion, Quawar, and Pholus. And Heather Ensworth has done videos on them, which I love, and I've recommended before, and I recommend again. I will try to find them and link them again here so you can get a more in-depth, her perspective I completely, totally agree with, I love. But I'll give you the mini version here. So Ixion, long story short, to me is an energetic of the choice. To me, Ixion is a reminder that we have been in a time of forgetting, and that as we are now in this time of remembering, it's really a choice to choose remembering or not. And there is a certain element of energetic that perhaps isn't choosing to remember. So Ixion to me, actually, no, sorry, Ixion is 2 things. Ixion, number 1, is the quality of choice that some beings, some energy is perhaps going to choose, or is choosing not to remember. It's also, for me, a reminder of the pain, the suffering of the forgetting. I want to say the patriarchy, but it's more than the patriarchy. It's the time of forgetting. It's been exceedingly painful, narcissistic, often sadistic even, and what's the word I'm looking for? Cruel, utterly lacking any kind of empathy whatsoever, acting out of extreme greed and, all the things, right? All the horrificness of the world. Yeah, and Ixion in the mythology just very blatantly chose chose to be hurtful, very blatantly, in service of, well, theoretically in service of himself, but it didn't even turn out to be in service of him. So it's just making bad choices that are very hurtful. That's the Ixion energy to me. But it's not an inevitability of it. To me, it's a reminder of it. And it's a reminder of this energy that even in this time of remembering, there is an element of an energetic not, choosing not to remember, etc. Okay. Then Pholus, this one over here, I'm going to get to Quawar in a second because different. Pholus, again, all of these beings have so many different layers. Pholus is one of the centaurs, and again, many, many layers there. But on a basic level, Pholus, for me, all of the centaurs bring in an element of ancestral healing. And Pholus in particular has this theme of ancestral healing, especially 4 generations back, but just ancestral healing in general. Okay, especially in Capricorn. Really, really strong potential energy of ancestral healing and of going through the layers, healing, releasing through the layers of ancestral trauma that have been there. And then especially with, in the mix of with Ixion, this opportunity to be releasing and letting go of the layers of healing in our ancestry, in our DNA, in our memories of what it is to be on the planet Earth, through this time of forgetting, through the time of patriarchy, through all the pain, all the suffering that has gone on, that we can release it, we can let it go, we can heal it. And then we have Quawar sitting there in the middle of those 2. And Quawar, So this is another Kuiper belt object. Ixion is also a Kuiper belt object, but especially with Quaoar, I feel the need to be really careful how we interpret it or interact with it. It's one of the ones I feel especially strongly we maybe need to do a co-remembering with, because Quaoar is a deity. It's actually it's called a god. Well, it's called a he, but it's more of a non-binary, gender fluid energy. And it is it's a being associated with the traditions of the Tongva people in the LA basin area. And so I just feel a little sensitive, really interpreting it too much without going much, much more deeply into honoring and really trying to listen to this being and honor the actual traditions of that place, et cetera, et cetera. So with all that caveat, though, what I will say is from the little I do know about it, and that I think that most of us know about it, is Quaoar is associated with this being who sings creation into existence. So for me, to have Quaoar in the mix of all this is this beautiful reminder that yeah, we have the Ixion quality of like, that sucks. Like that just like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Certain things have gone on and still are going on that just utterly suck. It's just true. Follis then says, yes, that was really, really difficult, and let's let that go. Let's transmute that. Let's heal those layers of ancestral trauma, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Quaoar, to me, is sitting there holding the whole thing and singing, not necessarily through words, more like through the beingness of what creation is, life force creation is. And then we have Ceres, who these three, the Ixion, Quaoar, and Follis, they're in a long-term conjunction with each other. They're all moving very, very slowly. And so they're actually in a many-year conjunction together. And Ceres moves much faster. So Ceres is just going to be with them basically this year and then move on, right? But these three are together for a while. So Ceres, to me, and it's fascinating that Ceres is going to be with them while they're all getting squared by the nodes of the moon. Because when something is getting squared by the nodes of the moon, for me, it's like the cosmos holding it in a craniosacral hold, where it has the opportunity, especially, yeah, it's being held, like on the occiput and the sacrum, and then in the middle is where healing can arise. If you're familiar with craniosacral therapy, if you're not, don't worry about it. Let those words go. But bottom line, when these three are being held by the nodes of the moon, squared by the nodes of the moon, they're being held for healing. They're being highlighted for healing. It's a really strong opportunity for transformation and coming into a different way of being. So while that's happening, that's when Ceres is also with them in her retrograde journey, specifically, especially in her phase 2 and her phase 3 of that retrograde journey. But she came along and gave them a little kiss, like gave them a little tap when she was starting the phase 1 in February of 2024. Then she went all the way up to, went kind of past them, but not too far away, to 21 of Capricorn. And then just now she went retrograde on May 14th. And now she's heading back and she's saying, hey guys, here I come again. Let's do this thing, right? And let's do this thing in concert with the nodes of the moon. Okay, so what is this thing? Well, for me, again, I would love your thoughts. But for me, when Ceres is coming into the mix of this while this is all being squared by the nodes of the moon, I feel her bringing in, number one, the divine feminine. It's powerful, powerful reminder, this energy of hey guys, you don't have to be doing this alone. Like this is all, I mean, Qualwar, like I said, is a kind of non-binary energy, but Ixion is definitely a masculine energy, and Pholis is also a masculine-ish energy. So Ceres is the only blatantly, definitely divine feminine energy in all of this. And she's this powerful, nurturing energy too. And she brings in an element of unconditional love for me. And then she also does bring in, I would say, the energy of grief and the role of grief, and the fact that when we're sitting with this reality that so much pain and suffering has gone on, and this utterly sucked, and it still does, there's an element of needing to grieve it. So in other words, you know, we're in this time of remembering, but that doesn't mean that the pain has gone away. And so what this feels to me like is that in this period of the next few months, what might arise, what might be really alive for a lot of us, maybe in all in our own ways, might be the sense of, yeah, I'm in the time of awakening. I'm in the time of remembering. And I am so sad that all of this stuff has gone on that has been utterly horrific, and still is utterly horrific. And there's a way that grief and that sadness can be part of the healing, and also maybe can be part of the, possibly the part of the fuel that moves us, you know, that fully helps us come into the remembering, or in some way, I don't know. But again, these are all going retrograde, and then they're all going to go direct around the same time, and Ceres will be going direct, exactly squaring the nodes of the moon. So August will be a great time to revisit all of this energy. It's hard for me to tap into it, you know, when we're sitting here in the middle of May, and it's going to be another 3 months before she goes direct, squaring the nodes of the moon. I have a feeling probably I'll do another video around that time, because it's just, it's not, I'm not in the energetic of that isn't here yet. But I can imagine that being really, really powerful when she's going direct in the mix of these three, exactly squaring the nodes of the moon. Super powerful time for us to really come into our own power, and our own, yeah, just a shift in our relationship with all of this. So I just want to throw in one other thing, and then I'm gonna close with a few closing thoughts. I just also want to point out that during this whole time, let me fast forward actually to August. Yeah. So here is July, actually. In July, like I said, Neptune is going to go retrograde, number one, at 29:55 of Pisces. And also in this time period, two other Kuiper Belt beings are going to be really, really prominent, because they're going to be right on the nodes of the moon. So Makemake is going to be right on the south node of the moon, and Salacia is going to be right on the north node of the moon. Still not too far from Leleaku Hanua. So there's that. Leleaku Hanua, I feel like, is definitely playing a role here. I'm hesitant to put lots of labels on that, because I want us to be feeling into that together. But for sure, you know, that's an energetic I feel there. And I don't want to put a whole lot of labels yet onto the Makemake and the Salacia. Maybe I'll make other videos where I talk a little more about that. But again, I want to give them a little space for us to co-remember with them too, if possible. maybe down the line, or just to share with each other what arises for us with them. And but I want to name that they're right there. They're present. Maki Maki on the south node, Celestia on the north node. And then, Neptune going retrograde almost, minutes away from being in Aries. And so that's yet another energy of this retrograde pulling us back into reconfiguring, rethinking how we're doing this, all of this whole thing, and helping us to remember the Neptune going retrograde in 29 of Pisces, among other things, helping us to remember we are source. We really, really are source. And when it's going retrograde, it's squaring the galactic center. It's squaring Varda, another Kuiper Belt being who I love, 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 love. And and it's like before we enter Aries, we have to really, really, really remember that we're Pisces. We are source. Before we are the spark of life, we are everything. So that's a whole other topic. There's so much coming up actually next March when Neptune does enter Aries, March 30th of 2025. There is some fascinating things going on with the north node of the moon and Neptune. Anyway, that is another topic for another time, but really fascinating stuff coming up with that. Yeah. Okay. So, okay. I just want to give a few concluding thoughts. Food for thought, and I would love to hear your feelings, thoughts on it. All right. So, so as I've been saying, the overarching theme here is we've been in a time of forgetting. We're now in this time of remembering. And the time of forgetting is, I should say, the pain is still playing out, it's still here. People are making some choices that are pretty awful still. There's a lot going on politically. There's a lot going on just in the world, wars and, really awful things. I won't get into it, but I don't need to get into it. You know what I'm talking about. So, okay, so what do we do with that? What is this asking us to do? What is the opportunity here? And I don't have all the answers, but I will say a couple things that I feel called to say. So number one, it's not only, of course, in the bigger outside world where this kind of dynamic is going on or goes on. There's the blatant Ixion kind of stuff with the bombing of people and political stuff that's terrible and horrific violence and all of that. Okay. Absolutely, yes. And probably a lot of us have, I would call them more micro interactions going on, or, more personal interactions going on where there are people in our lives who maybe we feel like, there's an Ixion figure, or like, there's somebody playing out the forgetting. Like they're really, really still playing out that forgetting energy. And we would like that to go away, or we would just like them to wake up, or all of that, right? I can think of plenty of examples in my own life. So the main thing I feel called to say about this is that I think part of what we can be doing in the next few months, May to September, but of course beyond that as well, anytime, especially now though, I think one of the opportunities, as all of this is going retrograde and the nodes of the moon are coming to square the Capricorn things going retrograde, etc. I think there's an opportunity for us to, in our remembering, to remember ourselves as the power and as to basically take responsibility, Capricorn, for ourselves, for our own knowing of our own power and truth and self. Because a huge thing that has gone on in the time of forgetting really comes down to feeling disempowered and being disempowered, not only feeling disempowered, truly being disempowered in many, many ways. And that's absolutely true. It wasn't like those feelings aren't made up. They're real. And so in this time, as we're moving into the time of remembering, and we see all of this pain still going on and this suffering, it can feel really tempting and easy to externalize, to still stay in the sense of wishing the outside world to change, which again is totally legitimate. Of course, I want certain things to change really badly. I'm not going to stop wanting that. That's not what I'm saying. But I think there are certain levels of healing in ourselves that we probably haven't done quite yet, because we're brand new to this time of remembering, in a sense, I think most of us. And part of the remembering is coming fully back into our own bodies and fully back into the reality that we are source itself. And so when we come in contact even with something in our own life that feels potentially disempowering, even in a small way, quote unquote, relatively small way, our tendency can be to feel triggered and to react as though we are disempowered, to react as though we are having our power taken away, even if we're not. I'm trying to think of a good example because it feels like it would be helpful to ground it a little bit. It's hard to think of an example right this second. But anyway, bottom line, what I would really encourage, maybe, again, if it feels right, is if you're having a moment where you're thinking, wow, this person in my life sucks or is doing this thing that's terrible, right? Like I would say a stereotypical example I can think of is a lot of women feel like men are making XYZ choice and continuing to treat women or treat the world in a patriarchal, condescending kind of way, or et cetera, et cetera. And so absolutely, and it's totally justified that we will feel angry about that. Of course, I definitely do. And I can notice myself almost jumping out of my body, like because I'm angry about it or I'm upset about it. And what we can do, though, is we can come back, whatever gender we are, we can come back fully into our body, and we can take a deep breath and we can think, okay, am I actually disempowered right now, or is that me just reacting? Like, because there's been such a pattern of disempowerment in not only this lifetime but many, many, many other lifetimes, we can have an easy reaction where we assume on a body level that we are having our power taken. But I think at this moment in time, there are big events happening where people's power definitely is being taken. That is true, and I'm not denying that. And I think even in our own lives, in smaller ways, we can feel like sometimes our power is being taken when it's not. And so I think one thing we can do maybe is like small steps, but really big small steps. These are small steps that make a big difference, is to even just take time to be noticing when there are moments maybe where we're reacting as though our power is being taken when it's maybe not. And we are the only ones who can choose to have our power, boom, straight in our bodies, boom, right here. I'm right here. I don't know why it keeps doing that. I'm fully in my body. My power is right here. I'm present right here. If let's say a man is talking to me and mansplaining or whatever, he didn't actually take my power, right? That's a relatively small example, right? So that's an example of where I could easily feel triggered and feel like, uh-oh, here's yet another. I've had how many lifetimes as a feminine being where the masculine has taken my power in very serious ways. So of course, if somebody tries to talk over, even my 17-year-old, if he tries to talk over me, I get mad. I do get mad. Yeah, or anybody talking over me actually bothers me quite a lot, but especially a male person. That's just true. It just does. And so there's this fine line between reacting and coming back fully into my power, fully into my body, where from the place of being fully in my own power in my own body, I can then say, hey, I'm feeling triggered, or I have something I need to say, and I noticed you just talked over me or whatever it is, as opposed to like yelling it out or whatever. That's I don't know if that's the best example, but that's the only one coming to me right this second. So I hope you get the idea. I think there are many, many, many examples of that all day long, probably for lots of us. And I just have a feeling that these kind of things are going to be coming up in our families, in our relationships, certainly in the world over the coming months. And I would encourage us to maybe use it as a healing opportunity, a healing moment, in service of the ultimate point here. It's all in service of this time of great remembering and the imperative that we are the remembering. Literally, we are the remembering. It's not a game. It's not, um, it's not a trivial thing. This is crucial, that we are the remembering, that we are choosing to be the remembering every moment. And so I see this whole phenomenon, what I've just been talking about, as the cosmos really saying, thank you so much for being the remembering. And now let's give you a little guidance, a little help in transmuting some of those layers of pain that have gone on in the time of forgetting, so you can be the remembering even more powerfully, even more completely, and even more fully. Okay, I think I made my point there. I hope that makes sense. Yeah, and the Ceres energy, the Ceres going retrograde, squaring Chiron. I didn't touch on that. That's just really significant, that when it just went retrograde on May 14th, 2024, squaring Chiron exactly, it's this nurturing Ceres energy with the grief, touching on that wounded healer, so it's bringing, as Ceres is doing this retrograde journey, it has that quality of the Chiron healing, powerful healing and compassion coming with her. And like I said, when Ceres was squaring the nodes of the moon during the eclipse season we just had in March and April of 2024, Chiron was on the north node of the moon. So Chiron, even though Chiron is a little bit moving now away from the north node of the moon, still the Ceres is carrying that touch of Chiron as she's coming retrograde to meet back with the Ixion, Quawar, and Pholus, and then square the nodes of the moon herself again. And when she goes direct. So in August. Yeah, so it might be a time that could feel painful. It could feel like some layers of the pain arise, and it might not. It might not feel painful. It might be really beautiful in lots of ways. But again, the point is, it's all in service of the imperative of this time of remembering. Okay. I would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for listening. Really beautiful, powerful time right now. So many levels. And you, if you're listening to this, you are key to it. So again, you're needed. Your soul song. I've talked about that a lot lately. And yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of it. I'll see you soon.